Tim Steckel. I am so thrilled you're here, and you've got your compost hat and your Another World is Possible shirt to show it a little bit, and we can't really see it that well. There you go. Another World is necessary.
Yes,
Made
right.
from poop. We're going to hear about the fact that the dye that made the words is actually, the poop driven as opposed to artificial chemical driven, all that stuff. So we're going to talk about all that good stuff. And Tim came into my life through LinkedIn, as many of my guests do. And I just got so inspired and turned on by the whole connection between loving compost and what I had been doing for years, which was sort of mediocre composting, but I've been really into it. And I moved to a building in Connecticut that is nearby the public compost access point. So I have my compost box, and I am just so excited to have compost in my life and to share it with everyone. And in this spookiness of Halloween and connecting it with the great metaphors that come with the witch's brew and these cool aspects of what we can play with around the darkness and spookiness and creepiness and the worms and all that. There is so much good stuff here to play with. So welcome, Tim. Thank you so much for joining me and our audience and at Resilience Gone Wild. And tell us a little more than I just did about you and how you got into this love of compost.
Well, thanks for having me today. Glad to be here. I'm Tim Steckel. I run the Compost Marketing Agency, and I got into composting kind of by accident. But composting is kind of a rabbit hole. It pulls you in, and then once you you can't stop. So one thing kind of led to another. I'm actually from Germany, where we had an organic waste collection for 30 years in my hometown, and I never really thought about it that much because I was a young boy when they first gave us a green bin, and then 10 years ago I moved to Cleveland Heights, and I was wondering, where's the green bin? Where am I going to put my food waste? And then all of this kind of just had this spiraling effect on my life. And I've been a marketer for 20 years. And about 4 years ago, I just fused my love for composting and soil microorganisms with marketing, and decided to make a niche marketing agency that is just focused on composting and organic recycling. And that's it in short. There's probably a lot more I could say.
Where's my green bin? That's the key question, right? I live in both Florida and Connecticut, and in Connecticut, I was so excited to find the green bin by being able to access it. But in Florida, there's no green bin. And I'm it's so painful to throw out organics and put them in landfills. And it's just this mindset that you get into. You're I cannot put food waste. So first of all, you got to waste less so that you're throwing out less because there isn't even this access point. But all kinds of good stuff comes up, right? And by the way, I have a very, very great love of Cleveland and Cleveland Heights. I met my husband in the area.
Oh, okay.
So I did at the time, 35 years ago, they did not have green bins. I don't remember them there. So there has been progress because of you. So
that's one of the aspects of my work is working on building organic recycling infrastructure and helping those who do. And in Cleveland Heights, we now just, I think a few months ago, they opened the first drop-off stations they're by a company called Rust Belt Riders. This is kind of where this T-shirt is coming from. Tilth Soil is it's the outlet. So Rust Belt Riders is what collects all the food scraps, and then Tilth is selling it the soil. And they've been very active getting all these drop-off locations started. I'm in the Ohio Organics Council, which is the UCC state chapter for Ohio, and we've been doing a lot of events around building this infrastructure because it's critical. Because you get used to it, and then you get into this flow, and then you go somewhere else where they don't have the infrastructure yet, and all of a sudden you realize it's not it takes a lot of effort and work for it to just exist, so that we can take it as second nature.
Yeah, it's so interesting because I recently heard that I'm a New York City kid, and in New York
Yeah.
City now, in buildings with I think over 30 apartments, is mandatory composting, which is so cool. It's
Yeah.
not that well enforced specifically yet, but if you get people in the mindset of which we never connected to before, that like, it's not just recycling your plastics, which is all that greenwashing of if I can use as many plastic bottles as I want, as long as I put them in a recycling bin, they will, I'm doing the right thing, which is a
Right.
totally separate topic. But like to
Yeah.
get that whole additional mindset around organic waste and food waste and creating this cycle, right? This whole circular and knowing where your food comes from and where your food goes, as opposed to like throwing it out. I'm done with my responsibilities. So it's such a great, it feels so good to know that people like you, thank you, have created, because it doesn't happen by itself. As you said, like it has to be marketed, it has to be explained, it has to be made important. And you
Yes.
and others have done that in so many places in the world. So thank you. We have a long way to go. I
We
know you were
do.
just in
Yeah.
China working on
Yes.
this, and that's just
Yes.
pretty cool. So,
Yeah. Yeah. And to New York, they still have. They're also, like you said, they're just getting started, so they have a lot of the kinks that need to be worked out in actually making sure the organic waste gets composted. And as you can imagine, if you have 30 or more people living in a building, I mean, 30 is probably still a small building, um, then it's tricky getting people to actually not put the plastic in the green bin, because like just providing them is one thing, building the infrastructure, but then educating people of using it is the other. And that's kind of where I come in. So,
yeah.
yeah.
And that whole aspect that'll bring us into the Halloween and the spookiness and the creepiness
Uh-huh.
and we're Tim and I are on the same page. We're like trying to shift this whole thing from spooky, creepy, icky, like the ick to the wow, right? Like that's like my life is switching from ick to wow and not
Yeah.
ow, wow. And to highlight like the amazing cool stuff that goes on in organic waste process that breaks it down and creates really good stuff is just such a highlight to like understand and know about. So let's talk creepy first. Let's talk why this is like witch's brew and spider webs and all the cool stuff that goes on. And remembering that I started with worms, and there's a specific kind of worm and that matters. And I have to say, when I was composting, I did not do the research about what type of worm or anything like that. So my compost took way longer than it should have to process through because I didn't have the right worms. But that's that's something we should talk about. So worms are key, but so is the
Yes.
mycelium network and all the other creepy crawlies that create the spider webs and the vampires that are wandering through the witch's brew that's steaming and bubbling and is not creepy and scary. It's so cool. Okay. That's my go for it.
Yeah, well, I guess there's a couple different aspects to this, right? The worms definitely help with composting. There's a whole kind of segment called vermicomposting, which is composting with worms, although uh, they're not necessary, right? It's like you can also have other methods of composting where you'll find some worms kind of like crawling in from your garden. But like if you do vermicomposting, yeah, you want to get composting worms to and have like kind of like a special system set up for the worms so that they thrive and do well in your compost system. I guess the aspect of like witches, and the witch's brew and the magic potion.
Yeah.
I think compost is some sort of magic potion for the soil. We take all these different ingredients and materials and some spider legs, like whatever they would put in. And I think maybe
Like leg
I
of
get,
spider and with tail
yeah,
of newt, like all.
yeah, all these like weird ingredients. And
Yeah.
I've composted a fair amount of some weird ingredients, like an opossum or dead raccoon. It's definitely yeah, I guess some of the weirder things. I think in terms of like the whole witch kind of thing, is also a history of like being misunderstood in a way, I guess,
Yes.
like
Yes.
some people say that witches were just kind of women who knew their ways around herbs and like, these
Yes.
things. So I guess, making compost is a little bit similar to that. It's definitely becoming more mainstream. It's my motto: make compost
Hmm.
mainstream, but it's still a little bit on the fringes. As a gardener, people know what composting is, but most people who and we all eat, right? We all have food waste. Most people still don't really make the connection as to why it's important to actually compost. And yeah, so maybe we can get some of the excitement that people have for Halloween, for composting.
Yeah, somehow connect like Halloween to directly connect with composting so that all of
Yeah.
that extra food and extra wasted, not the wrappers
Hmm.
that go somewhere else. And hopefully there's not wrappers. We have to go back to apples. Like, forget this one godforsaken story about the
Yes.
blade that was in the apple 50 years
Uh-huh.
ago that ruined organic, healthy treats as part of Halloween. We got to get back to that also, so that the waste can go, the cores can go straight into the the eggs people throw. It can go straight into the compost bin. So,
Right. Yeah. And the pumpkins themselves, I mean,
yeah, yeah.
um, I, I, I once pulled up the numbers for the amount of pumpkins that were like used for decorating. I should have looked this up, the number. Maybe I'll do it in
It's
a second,
crazy.
but
Then it's
it's,
in,
it, it's like tons and tons of pumpkins. And so that's one thing. Make sure you're composting your pumpkin. There's a lot of these community composters now that do a pumpkin drive where they collect
wow.
those pumpkins. If you don't have, if you don't have a compost thing nearby, maybe find a farm. Some of their animals want to eat it. And then I just like saw
Yes,
this
yes.
this this trend where people now actually like decorate the pumpkins with glitter, and that's like something where I'm
Oh,
that's like spooky to me
yeah.
because like I think like the whole idea of carving a pumpkin is that's something I can get on board with. I think it's really it's a great activity. But then yeah, I think it was my wife. She came home and she had like this girl date with a bunch of friends, and then she had this pumpkin and it was like glitter on it. I was like, "What did you do with this?" And they were like, "Oh well, yeah, we have all these things there now." And then because like then you can't put it in the
Right.
compost.
Yeah.
Like if you have glitter on it, it's plastic waste, and you don't want that in your soil. So, but I think it's a good idea or a good picture, to make people realize that if it's been alive, it can be composted. If it's plastic or another material, then we can't.
I hadn't really thought about it, but just the
Right? Yeah.
idea that
Yeah.
the number of pumpkins,
Hmm.
millions or whatever, that
Yeah.
are used for decoration,
Yeah.
gourds, all the small
Uh-huh.
squash, and then just
Yeah.
thrown out versus
Uh-huh.
eaten is another
Yeah.
thing to think about, right? Like, at least we used
Yeah.
to make to put our pumpkin seeds when we used to carve
Yeah.
pumpkins in the oven and eat the seeds, which are so yummy.
Yeah.
But the flesh is like really delicious, right? And if you don't
Hmm.
want to eat it, there are a lot of animals that really like it. So we throw these pumpkins out before they go bad because we don't want to have a rotten pumpkin, and then they just go in the garbage, like it's in the landfill. Like, there's just something that we can do so much, Tim, right, to like
Right.
change that dynamic. Like, anybody who's listening, just do something good with that pumpkin to at least put it back into the cycle and use it as food, and don't put any glitter or glue or mark or whatever on it. Just carve the holes and eat the pumpkin seeds. So
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Or, just essentially I've been keeping it on my doorstep until it just sort of
yeah.
collapses, and then you can just put it in your garden and that will actually be a warm magnet. Like if you leave that there, the worms will find it, and I'm pretty sure it won't be there next spring. You'll be like, where did my pumpkin go? And
Are
it's
you going to have
been
a
eaten.
pumpkin crop,
Yes.
a big pumpkin crop of your own, so you
Yeah.
can you don't have to buy any, you can
Yeah.
just have them
Well,
grow?
if you leave that pumpkin and it has seeds in it, you might actually get a volunteer pumpkin patch
How
next
fun is
year.
that, right? Like,
Yeah.
remember the old Peanuts
Yes.
cartoons? Like they used to hang out in the pumpkin patch.
Yeah.
We need to all have pumpkin patches again. That would be so fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. So go down the icky thing. We're in this
Yeah.
Halloween mode, and we
Uh-huh.
have to make sure we keep worms in this game also. But
Yes.
the
Uh-huh.
ickiness of the rotten pumpkin. So it's sitting on your front steps, and I've done that too, where it's like, okay, I finally have to get rid of it. And
Mm-hmm.
we have this similar thing with Christmas trees that people throw out
Yeah.
Christmas trees, and they
Uh-huh.
get picked up, and I think many people just think that's a good way to get rid of them and throw them in the garbage.
Hmm.
But like,
Yeah.
I think in most cases, if not all, they're being picked up so that they can be put back into nature, as long as there's no glitter all over them. And
Yeah, if your city has a yard waste program, not necessarily a food waste program, then they will be composted. But I have another thing that you can. I used to build my raised beds with Christmas trees. So like I go around like in beginning of January, they all throw them out. I collect like 20 of them, and you can put them in your garden. And can make these, they're called culture, and it's essentially a raised bed. You have to fill them in with other things, but they make a great base for garden beds. Yeah. So
they're
if
the
you're
right kind of
planning to,
wood.
yes, well, it's a mix. You want to add some finished compost, some horse manure, or like other nitrogen-rich things. If you
More
just
icky
have the
stuff.
wood, yes, yeah. And the icky thing is this really, if you think about it, our trash bins are icky, and it's because we put all these things in there like combined. I guess if you actually start composting, if you have your separate food waste container, then your regular waste will be less icky. It's
Yeah.
it's a way, and
Go down that
yeah,
smell thing, because
yeah, yeah,
compost, you put all
hmm,
this food that you would think
yeah,
would smell and rotten stuff,
hmm,
and compost
yeah,
actually doesn't smell. It's like an
yes,
amazing thing. So
hmm,
go down that path. Like, we're trying
yeah,
to get rid of the ick. Like,
right,
composting is
yeah.
actually not icky.
No. So if the ick really comes from anaerobic digestion in a way. So composting is an aerobic process. That means we need air, we need oxygen in our materials. And if you just have a bunch of food waste that's kind of sitting in a bucket or in your container, then it lacks carbon. So food waste is high in nitrogen, and if you just leave that by itself, it'll just start to really get icky and smell bad. And that's a very easy way to troubleshoot your own composting. If it smells bad, then usually there's two things. It's either not enough carbon material, and carbon material here means leaves, wood chips,
Brown versus green, right?
brown, yeah, cardboard or stuff like
Paper,
this.
yeah.
Paper, yeah, paper. It's like I used to be able to just kind of recommend cardboard and paper, but there's a bunch of paper that has like forever chemicals in it, and
Yeah.
so it's weird. Straw, like if we're going back to like Halloween decorations, some people love to like put a straw bale out. That's your carbon, so you can blend that
How awesome
with
is
food
that?
waste. Yeah,
Yeah.
so essentially, when you compost at home, you got to make sure that you have a carbon storage, so to speak, because you have food waste every day, a little bit, right?
Right.
B-
Yeah.
Um, but you don't really have a constant
You do with
supply of
Amazon
carbon.
boxes.
Yes, you do. If you do have those, yes. And so yeah, or like brown paper bags, another thing. I used to like collect all my leaves in the fall and put them
Hmm.
in kind of like a storage. You can like keep in those bags, put them in the garage. I keep in my chicken coop. Um, but yeah, so every time you add a little bit of the food waste, you add some of the carbon, and then the carbon actually absorbs all these bad smells. And then finished compost, obviously, if it's finished, if it's went through the stages it needs to go through, it doesn't smell bad at all, right? It's like the ick is really it's not in the compost, because the ick is in the raw materials, which I would still call food waste, not compost,
Right. Right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know what?
And
Tell me about I have some friends who've shown me
yeah.
this thing. One of them named theirs Oscar. I don't think it's called
Hmm.
Oscar, but these
Okay.
machines that you put your
Yeah.
waste in and it grinds it up and chops it up so that it's doing some of the
Yeah.
work that the worms and the other
Uh-huh.
critters are doing. And I'm
Hmm.
not sure. And then they use those compost. I'm not sure. And it's like a 1 day thing. Like, talk
Yeah.
about that
Yeah.
because that's a popular new way to
Okay.
compost.
Yeah. So there was essentially three things that you just mentioned. First thing is Oscar. Oscar itself, I think it's just a collection system that has monitors and there to educate people on using
Oh,
the recycling things. So Oscar is a system that is in like airports and other areas where there's high traffic, a lot of people, and you don't just have the organic waste, but you have like recycling and other waste streams, and then it helps you to recycle essentially. That's Oscar. Then we have these food waste machines, and there we have a couple different types. So one is there was like this whole controversy about them pushing into the market and calling themselves kitchen composters.
yeah,
And then
yeah.
the composting industry like kind of had to push back and say like, wait a minute, like this is not actually compost in here. What you're doing is dehydrating and grinding. So food waste is 80 to 90% water. So if you kind of take that water out, you can, compact the mass by a lot. And that's kind of this 1 day thing where you put it in and then it's kind of gone.
And then
And
what do
then
you do
now
with it?
there's,
What do you do with
well,
that?
with
Yeah.
so that's the other thing. So what are you do? What are you going to do with this? If you have this sort of like dehydrated and ground up digest state, that's what we call it. You still need to. It's not finished compost. It's essentially still a raw ingredient in a way. It's not as raw as food waste, so it's not as icky. And I think these machines do a good job of like taking the ick out of it in a way. Um, you need to essentially, yeah, you need to still compost it. So like put it outside and give it time to to mature. Blend in some other ingredients like leaves, because if you rehydrate it, it's just kind of sloppy. So you need to make sure it gets some texture. There is
Well,
one,
it
yeah.
speeds up the process though, right? Because it's chopped in. Is it chopped into small pieces also, or is it just dehydrated?
Yes. Well, it's essentially ground up. So yes,
Yeah.
if you want to compost things, the more surface area you have, the better the composting process will work because the microorganisms will start to digest it, right? So like if you think about if you have like if you chopped off like branches of your bushes, you want to like maybe like run them through a shredder, like a wood chipper, so that it's small, more surface area,
Hmm.
better material. With these kitchen machines, there's like one company that stands out for me. It's Wrinkle, and they actually add like microbes into their
Wow.
thing. So that then kind of takes it back into the composting direction. Um, and it's less of just a powder, and it has actually some life in it. It also doesn't produce finished compost, um, but it's something where it's already inoculated with microorganisms. And in sort of like, I look at it like from the big picture. I want to make compost mainstream, so we need to have a
Yeah.
lot of different options, right? Some
Yeah.
people they will have the bin at their house. Some people have something in their backyard. Some people have a pickup service, and then some people will use these machines in their kitchen to deal with their food waste. And I think they're really good at. I think like once you start using one of these machines, you actually realize how much food you're wasting. Because like if you have this like dedicated spot for it, then you become more aware of, oh my God, like I maybe could have like done something with this. And like in terms of like spooky things, right? Like the average household in the United States wastes $2,900 every year is like what they pay on money on food that goes straight in the trash, right?
Yeah.
So that's like a little vacation right there. And
You know what's interesting though?
yeah,
That's what's coming up for me around this is,
yeah,
I have found I eat a lot of fruits and vegetables and I buy them whole. Like I'm a whole
hmm
food person and I have a
hmm
lot of waste from
yeah,
rinds and cores and whatever. And I think about that because there's somebody else on LinkedIn who's like amazing at teaching us. There's other people teaching us how to reduce food waste and use the rind and use the rest of it. But anyway, so the glitch is that if you're eating whole, real food, you're going to have more food waste. If you're eating packaged, like prepackaged, you're not going to have food waste as much as you're going to have tons of plastic and all the rest of that waste, right? Which is sort of an interesting conflict. So like, don't get scared away by having more food waste because you're eating healthier food, right? Where's that going for you? Your thought about that?
Yeah. Well, I think if you buy processed food, the food waste has already happened somewhere else. Right. So it's not like that you're like creating less food waste. So I would still encourage people to eat whole foods and buy whole foods. I think it's fine, like if you have the peels or the cores, that's like I guess like there's different types of food waste, right? If you get takeout and you don't eat it, that's wasted food, and then there's food waste. So wasted food waste, it's kind of sounds similar, but it's kind of different. So if you have organic material left over through the process of preparing your food, I think that's great. I would encourage everyone to prepare their own food as much as possible. Yeah, just compost it and maybe grow some of your own food next year with it, or make or give it to a composting company and they'll do it for you. It's like you don't have to do it yourself.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the dark, icky compost pile, right? That once you're like connected to your food and that whole process, it becomes less icky because it's so cool and so wow as to what's going on. But so tell us what is going on in that witch's brew that's smoking and steaming and things that are moving around and the worms are like doing their thing. And this is, our resilience lesson of this episode is about the wiggling and the wiggle room and like that the worms are actually eating the stuff that's in there. They're not just moving around and getting by it. They're are those kids in the background?
I don't know. I guess I'm kind of muffled with my my headphones. I hope it stops. So
no, it's fun. Like we're talking Halloween, we're talking kids. Like I love the screaming and the happiness of the kids.
So maybe they're spooked out.
I love it. So give us put yourself in that compost bin and tell us what's going on as they wiggle through and create space and create more opportunity and get through the challenges of being stuck against something that is not edible or.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the biggest thing that's so spooky is that it's invisible. So it's hard to imagine for us. It's like the microorganisms, we can make them visible if we use a microscope. And once you do that, I think it becomes less scary. And there's so many different microorganisms involved in composting. Bacteria, you mentioned fungi already. We have nematodes, and then we have protozoa. We have little things that shred things. Like the worms are actually already pretty large. We can see them, and the worms are actually eating the microorganisms who are breaking down the food. So a lot of people think that the worms are like munching on the apple, but that's actually not what's happening. The microorganisms are munching on the apple, and the worm is eating the microorganisms. So
the worms are actually carnivores and omnivores. They're not herbivores.
Oh yeah. They're definitely, and that's probably a matter of definition, right? Because microorganisms aren't really classified as animals because they're like single cellular organisms. To me, like once I've started using the microscope, like to me, microorganisms are just an animal. Like to me, a nematode is just like an elephant is an animal to me, So yeah, these 1 teaspoon, it's just like, I don't know, a lot of people have heard this, but like 1 teaspoon of healthy compost has like more microorganisms than we have people on this planet, right? And that's
Wow.
1 teaspoon. So if you have a
Wow.
compost bin that's like a cubic yard, just imagine how many organisms are actually in there. And that
Okay,
is,
stop for 1 second.
yeah,
Tim and I have a side
yeah,
goal that we're going to
yeah.
try and make compost accessible, easy, fun, all that stuff. So,
Uh-huh.
there's some great activities and experiments and fun exploration that changes it from ick to wow. And this is
Hmm.
like the perfect one, right? So, if you're listening to this and you or your family or your community or you're in an education space, like get yourself that microscope that's probably nearby or is accessible and take a
Hmm.
teaspoon, take a little
Oh,
bit
yeah.
of what's
Hmm.
in a compost heap and be blown away, like go from ick to wow with these
Yes,
little experiments that are just life changing, right? It goes from
absolutely. Yeah,
possibility to absolute,
yeah.
necessity.
Yeah, I always say the microscope is like a never-ending subscription to the zoo. Like your zoo pass, you have to renew every year, and it's also nice. Plus, there's much more variety in the under the microscope. Like if you go to the same zoo, you'll see the same kind
Right.
of animals, but um, and like you say, like this, like ick to wow. And I've been doing workshops with kids, where I bring the a worm bin, and they're like, you can always see like some are like right in there, like, oh my god, like let me dig through the worms, and they're like some kids. They're like, oh, I don't know, and then like slowly they're like maybe like want to touch a worm,
Mhm.
and then I show them the microscope. I take a penny and I say, look at this penny, let's put it under, so they can kind of realize, oh my god, now I see all of this larger. And then we take some other things, put it under, and I'm certain I have inspired some kids to become a microbiologist in the future. Just
Absolutely.
like because I don't know, I think yeah, I hope, it just takes a little bit of this inspiration to send someone down a different path, and
Yeah.
and the
I mean,
microscope is, yeah,
yes,
we
and
need,
and I have to put out there that it's an
yeah,
incredibly important part to think about is the influence we as adults have, which is the biggest influence to defining things as ick versus wow. So like if you look at those kids, I'm guessing that like maybe you followed up with a conversation that got to the idea that the ones who were like wow and they had their hands in there and they were nature oriented kids whose parents had said let's go play in the dirt. And the
hmm,
ones who weren't were like, oh, dirt is dangerous. It's scary. Wash your hands. Don't touch the dirt. This is the world we're
right,
living in with this
hmm,
germophobic, endless
yes,
fear
hmm,
of nature that is
yeah,
such a goal of mine to like move
hmm,
people away from a fear of nature
oh,
and
yeah,
to a wow, which is where
yeah,
I've gone in life to so like, just whoever's listening, like just think about the language that comes out of your mouth when you talk to others about this kind of stuff. Like imagine if you just
yeah,
took a pause and said, wow, what might that look like? And what might my child or another adult change in their whole world change if they see things as magical and wow and alive and connected to us rather than separating because that's ick and we need to stay away
right,
from ick, right? Like that's the
yeah.
whole thing.
Yes, and the microorganisms, I think that's another thing how people can relate to it. We are like our body, is like 1 to 1.3, like as a ratio is like microbial cells, right? Like for every human cell, we have about 1.3 microbial cells. So we have like a trillion body cells, and then 1.3 trillion microbial cells. So we live like in symbiosis in a way, right? And
Totally.
and and like you mentioned something about washing hands. I just heard about a study a month ago or so where they actually they had people wash their hands like kids, and then put them in compost before they ate. So like one group ate, washed their hands with soap, and then went eating, and the group with the kids where they just washed their hands and put them in compost, they could see that the microbiome in their gut actually improved. So
Wow.
it's like it really there's so many things where we're interlinked. I think like connecting back to nature through our food waste. I think it ties all in. Like healthy soil means healthy people. It's all connected. Yeah.
It's so interesting because I had a guest on, a friend of mine, Elisa Bremner, last season about gut biome, and what comes to mind is like people are busy with the probiotics and the prebiotics without recognizing that the bio is this alive stuff, right? And that if you're like, the whole message is that you need, it says like on the packaging, like trillions of bio something. I don't think they say words that
cultures,
feel icky. Cultures, right? Like that those are actually intentionally putting that natural stuff into your body because it improves your whole system. Right, because it is we human cells need all that to work.
Yeah,
so keep going.
It's not just improving it; it's kind of the base for it. There's the rise of autoimmune diseases is linked to people lacking certain microorganisms that help them to absorb nutrients, or I mean that's like a whole nother podcast episode that we get into.
We'll do that. Watch for that one later. Yeah.
Right. And actually, I wanted to say something because you mentioned it in the beginning, and the shirt, right?
Yeah.
So this ink is made from pyrolyzed biosolids. So pyrolyzed means turning something into charcoal, and so biosolids is a different way for poop, essentially, and I think that's also taking it like from ick to wow in a way when when you can turn something icky as poop into a t-shirt, and I don't feel like you're wearing it.
How cool is that? And we will put some info on the show notes of how to get access to the remade poop into something. So are castings the poop from the worms?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So can you go down? I stopped you. So can you continue down the path of like what happens in this compost pile? All that good stuff that's happening that it involves poop and all the other cool stuff. So
It's essentially a chain reaction of metabolization. So like the bacteria start to eat into the apple, or the fungi. So the mold that you see as a fungi, they start to eat into this.
Which we think of as the spider web, right? That's like the setting of the whole thing that holds it all together. Yeah.
Right, but like for the worms, like this nice white fluffy mold is like a pot of spaghetti, and they slurp it up, and then the bacteria, they're getting eaten by nematodes, or there's like amoeba coming in and they eat the bacteria. And it's this whole thing of something eats something and then gets eaten by something else, and their excrements are being eaten by something else, and
which is kind of the food chain, right? Like, let's be real.
It's absolutely,
like, it's our food chain too. We're just eating things that eat other things.
And in terms of this particular thing, where we have a term, it's called the soil food web. So instead of it being a chain that's kind of like one directional, it's really a web of these going back to the idea of the spider web. And you need all these different players in it for it to work, and that's what makes healthy soil. That's what makes a healthy gut. You need to have the balance between microorganisms. So something starts to eat, and then eventually the worm eats some of the fungi and the bacteria, and then the worm itself has a microbiome in its gut. That's why worm castings are actually such a great soil amendment or fertilizer for your garden, is because it gets enriched by the microbiome of the worm. So a healthy or a good vermicompost has 6, 7, 8,000 different species of microorganisms in it. So if you think about that variety, right? Like, which zoo has 6,000 to 8,000 different animals? So
it's mind blowing to think about. Like,
if
you ask somebody to name all the species they knew, right? They would be large. Like, people wouldn't. have any
Yes.
sense that all this small stuff is
Yeah.
much more prevalent in terms of
Hmm.
the number of species, and we underestimate them like crazy. Like we have no idea the
Yeah.
exponential number of small creatures that are microscopic or just that aren't that visible. They don't even have to be microscopic, that we're completely ignoring as
Yeah.
vitally important to our ecosystems. And
Absolutely. Yeah. And they also have, and you, I don't know if you've heard about the story about like the return of wolves in
yeah, yeah.
Yellowstone National Park, where the introduction of wolves had an impact on animals like deer, and they would start to move more. And before that, so like it reshaped complete like rivers because there were now other plants that were allowed to grow, which otherwise would have been munched on by these deer. But now the wolf kind of, and that is similar with microorganisms. And it's like, um, if you think about 6,000 or more, like I've seen like 9,000 different species in a compost.
Wow.
Imagine what they have, like these connections with each other. So, and that's the same thing in your gut. If you could have like hundreds of different species of microorganisms in your gut. But if there are some of them are lacking, then those might be actually the puzzle piece that makes the puzzle complete. And that is like how, a soil could be unhealthy, a person could be unhealthy because, these microorganisms, they work in a team. And if imagine you had a soccer game but no goalkeeper, I mean that
Yeah.
game wouldn't work really well, or
Yeah. Or no
so
shooters, no
yeah,
scorers. Yeah.
right, like yeah, like
And there's so
yeah,
many medications that do, antibiotics are sort of the easy one to go down to. Like they're
hmm yeah, hmm
antibiotics.
yeah,
Like they're
right,
taking out, so, then they say add some probiotics and whatever to
yeah,
add some more new stuff in because you might
hmm
be depleted
yeah,
after, because whatever we put in our bodies is
yeah,
having some impact. And like, this is a really important
right,
impact.
hmm
So,
yeah.
okay. So how are
Well,
we doing on this? Oh,
it's
sorry, go ahead.
yeah, no, in terms of the probiotics, right? An apple is, I think, is also a prebiotic, if I'm correct.
I don't know.
Prebiotic apple, either pre or probiotic. So, but imagine you get an apple which has the herbicide or pesticide residue
Mm,
on the
yeah.
shell, right? So it's like you're trying to actually like do something good, but you're also getting a little bit of um, the antibiotics that we're using in agriculture. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, it's easy to kind of try and not get the antibiotics from your doctor if you're sick. Maybe sometimes you just have to take them. But
Yeah.
we are taking a little bit of
Yeah.
antibiotics in our food and our diet
Yeah.
involuntarily. Yeah,
So actually go down that path of drop in terms of
yeah,
compost of organic versus
yeah,
versus non-organic, because it's
yeah,
so hard to to have an
yeah.
organic compost pile when your food comes from all different sources.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to make a very important distinction here. Like, all organic matter is compostable. It doesn't
Right.
have to be like organically certified, right?
Right.
So it's like
Right.
so
Very important. Like it's
right,
still
yeah,
organic, even though it's
yes,
not certified organic, but there
right,
is that
right.
pesticide and
Organic,
herbicide thing.
yes. The organic thing has really just something to do with chemistry, something being organic or anorganic. So if it's been alive, it's an organic matter. And then is the organic certification. So yeah, in composting, we're dealing with things like persistent herbicides, where you might produce a compost, which then has a negative impact on plants if there's still persisting herbicides in them. So compost producers usually test and see where their feedstock's coming from. So generally speaking, I think it's totally fine to use non-organically grown produce to make compost. I wouldn't necessarily not use these. So that's my opinion on it. And it's hard to really like to be like super clean in a way. It's like you
Yeah, I mean,
always
we
get,
want to
get a
make
little
this
bit of it.
easy. And if
Yes,
you go
right.
down these
Yes,
boundary setting that are
yes,
so
yeah,
strict, like you
yeah,
you shut yourself down from
hmm
the variety you need and the action that you
yeah,
need to take. Like we live in a world that has too many blockades. And that's part of our story about worms, right? And composting and this whole Halloween thing, that like the whole idea is that the wiggly worms can move around obstacles and chew through obstacles and gain nourishment from what seemed like an obstacle so that they can move forward and not be stuck or not move backwards. So that's such a great example, like the organic versus certified organic. Like it should not stop us because it's part of the world we live in today, and we're not going to get away
Yeah.
from that, right? Like completely.
Right. Yeah. It's very tricky. It's hard to kind of draw the line where
Yeah.
like especially if like what like it is like a rabbit hole. Once you go through it, you're like, oh my God, like can I still eat this? Can I still eat that? Can I compost it or not? But the basic rule of thumb for composting is if it has been alive, you can compost it, you know? So, and going back to spooky things, I think it's not spooky, but I know some other people think. I've composted both my kids' placentas, right? So
Wow.
they gave me a bucket, and it's that like biohazard waste on it when I returned from the hospital. But yeah, I you know I made some a ceremonial grade compost,
Wow.
which is which I use for special plants for my kids. Yeah.
Well, honestly, if we're going to go down that kind of path, let's
Yeah.
go to the end of life, right? Like
Uh-huh.
the end
Yeah.
of life when we put bodies in the ground or we burn them or whatever. I mean,
Hmm.
let's just let's be real. Like they're being composted to a certain extent,
Yeah.
right? Like you're mixing wood and grit.
Yeah.
So can you take
Yeah.
us down that if you don't mind? I don't know.
Yeah.
Talk
So
about icky to wow, right? Like,
yes, and I mean Halloween is also, people put corpses, like not corpses,
yeah,
but like put these like skeletons in
yeah.
in their in their front yards. So I think Washington State was the first state to legalize human composting in 2019. And now we are up to 7 or 8 states. I think the last
Wow.
one I just heard was New Jersey. Um, so yeah, there is a process for it, for people to be composted,
Wow.
and
Do we
it's
call it
still, yeah.
composting? And that they call it
Um,
composting?
well, it's called human composting, but it's also called terramation, is what I've heard.
Oh, got it. Wow.
I've heard some different terms for it. Um, in the composting world, we call it human composting
Yeah,
because I guess
that's what it
and
is.
and yeah, that's what it is. And I mean, as a marketer, it's you always kind of have to like figure out like I've actually seen some states where they were like kind of weary about like what's going on there. What are they trying to do? Um, but I think the whole idea is great because, well, the human body is compostable. That's the first thing.
Yeah.
And I guess the family members, they get the compost back. And you can put it in your
Wow.
garden. You can put it, you can grow a tree with it.
Wow.
And
That's awesome.
it's still it's not an inexpensive way yet because we need more adoption of it, but compared to other forms of like cremation or they have like these things with water, it's a very it has a low impact, like environmentally speaking.
Yeah.
There's a company in Washington that called Return Home. They have an
Wow.
amazing social media presence. I think her name is Bree, um, and she's doing a really phenomenal job, kind of like taking the ick out of this thing and making it approachable in a way. Yeah. And I have a friend. He now has a tattoo on his arm that says "Compost me when I die." So
Wow.
yeah,
So it's not because it
shout
doesn't
out.
you on
Yeah,
your driver's license, you can donate your
no,
like you've got organ donation,
yeah,
but you don't have that. So you got to
right.
put it somewhere, right?
Yes,
You could wear the bracelet or you
yes,
could wear it on the
yeah,
tattoo.
yeah.
That's
I
pretty
wonder who's
awesome.
going to compost him.
That is
Yeah,
pretty
just
darn wild. So I've
yeah.
also seen that they're making coffins out of
Mhm.
mycelium. So it's so
Uh-huh.
interesting
Yeah,
because like you've already got the parts of the compost like coming together. Is
yeah.
there's been some pushback on that, I think, just from people being
Yeah.
icked by it. But we need to not be
Yeah.
icked by this, right?
Well, I guess in terms of end of life, there's also like some like religious aspects, where
Yeah.
people need to like abide by certain processes, or like expectations, I guess, for the burial. And I respect that. I think it's it's a very personal choice for someone's end of life. But yeah, I'm happy that this is now an option. It's not
Yeah.
it's not
And we
mandatory.
need to
So
create new
yeah,
rituals around it, right? Like
yes, yeah,
that's how things get
yeah,
accepted. I mean, you're the marketing
yeah,
guy too. Like things
hmm
become it's a critical mass to get acceptance. And once it is, and then that always involves some sort of language and ritual and process that
yeah,
is not an ick anymore. That is
yeah,
a spiritually beautiful and wow. And you've
yeah.
taken the ick out of it to make it a ritual.
Yeah, and I think it's a very beautiful sort of transformation. I mean, if you think about it, if the other options, right? I think the person, okay, well that's different. In the United States, you're allowed to take the ashes home.
Yeah.
Like you can have the ashes of someone. That's not legal in Germany. Like in Germany, you're never allowed to have these ashes at home. So I think it gives you a beautiful transformation, and composting as the whole process is about transformation. It is about
Yeah.
taking this like icky things, like the waste, which is really still a resource, which has a lot of energy in it. And you let it be transformed into something nourishing, into something that is the basis of more life,
Yes. Yes. Oh, that's so
Yeah.
beautiful. Absolutely. And you think about, the big question of what comes after human life and the idea that, you know, the separation possibly of, of legacy and soul and
Yeah.
all the memory that is totally separate from the organic bodies is
hmm
still there. It is so it's just disconnected with the physical organic body now. And to give life going forward, to feed more
Yeah.
life is so beautiful to me. And I hope that listeners, can digest that without just putting up a blockade and saying that's uncomfortable. Like make that feel comfortable and wow, not ick. Okay, so where are we? We've talked for a while. Where are we
hmm
on worms and on moving from ick to wow and on this Halloween fun?
Yeah.
How do you feel? Kai, if you're there, come on up and you are like such the Halloween lover and the kid lover, join in this conversation because if you're able to come on camera. So yeah, Tim, what do you think?
Am I here?
Yes.
Yeah, no. I mean, Halloween has always been a favorite of mine, going back to a kid. And I honestly, in this time of year, is become even more special because it's when my wife and I met, and it's when we got married in this month. A child was conceived around this time of month. And
Lots
it's
of
just,
happy stuff.
yeah, it's just the best. It's just the best holiday. And as a kid, I just remember having so much fun running around town, dressing up, and I think my wife and I we plan our outfits out probably a few months ago, so we already know what we're wearing.
And now
but
now
I'm
you
just
can
really
wear miles with
excited.
me.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm just really excited to kind of dive into what I appreciate you guys talking about is the ick to the wow, right? So I think whatever I end up doing with sound design on the front of this episode, it'll start out icky, but it's gonna it'll morph into wow. And just loving this conversation and everything Halloween has to offer.
Halloween is also a little bit about community. It's about the kids are like walking around in the neighborhood, making contacts with their neighbors. The neighbors themselves are excited to share something, and I think composting is it's really beautiful if you do it in community. There's this whole thing of community composting, making the compost together, sharing things together. I know Halloween isn't as close to Thanksgiving, but it kind of it goes in the darker times of the year, winter. It's like also we put the pumpkins out because it's the harvest season, right? It's the end of the at the end of the summer. And I think it's the perfect time to reflect, be thankful about all the food that we actually have. And I think, yeah, like handing out candy, giving something back. I think it fits really well with composting because, yeah, you transform it and then you can give something back, the compost, you know?
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And it's fun. And everyone wants to have fun on Halloween, right? Like
Right.
that's the whole point. And there's no other time. There's no other time that's separated from everything else. And it's just about fun that I can think of around than Halloween, where adults and kids and community come together around that idea.
Yeah, and I was just going to add the fun part. So we're in a farming town up here in northern New York. So right on the black dirt region. It's a very, very rich soil. And actually a lot of the crops end up going to the city, part of their food distribution programs and stuff. So really cool farming community. And where we compost is actually down there. There's a community compost, and you just bring your compost there, and then it gets used on the farm. And it's just really fun knowing that, you know, what I prepared or ate this week is, you know, going down the road and staying within my community. And I think to the point of, if you're apprehensive about starting your own composting journey, just look locally. I mean, I'm sure, and just carve out that, you know, 10 to 15 minutes a week to haul it on down there.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
it's been really fun.
Awesome. What else you got, Tim, as we wrap up and fall in love with the ick to the wow?
Well, you know, I could probably go on and on and on, talk all night with you guys, composting.
Okay, well, we'll give everybody all the information about how to
Yeah.
get in touch with Tim and any advice you want. And he speaks all over the place and writes and offers videos and on all kinds of support for why this is how our world should be going. So people will be able to reach out to you.
Yeah. I'm really thankful that you know, I had this opportunity to be with you today and then share a little bit about composting. Like you said, you know, you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Instagram, if you have any compost related questions. As a composter yourself, you know, at home, you can reach out. But also if you have any sort of projects around food waste, reducing food waste, making good use of organic material, educating people on this whole thing, soil microorganisms. Yeah.
So much good stuff. So much good stuff in that witch's brew. It's endless. Awesome.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you so much,
Yeah.
Tim.
Yeah, maybe we need to encourage everyone to like start their own witch's brew of compost in the backyard.
And make it fun.
Right. You don't need a kettle. You just need a something where you can make a pile and see the magic happen.
And find some magic spell to say over it and some of that fun language and paint some signs or whatever with poop-based ink and cardboard that's compostable. And life is just so good when you're connected to nature and connected to the reality of the cycles of nature and each other and doing it together. I mean, it's just a very different existence than keeping our blinders on and not caring where things come from and where things go. Like, it's just, life is better when we know about the cycles. So
Yes. Yeah.
and we feel it and we're part of them. Thank you, Tim.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah. Amazing.
We'll stay in touch. Great. Thank you.
Yes. Bye-bye.